All right, in this video, we are going to begin our discussion on powers and exponents. Now, in the previous chapter, we talked about the types of different numbers we were going to be using. We've talked about integers, we've talked about rational numbers, and all the operations involved with those types of numbers. And now we're going to talk about more operations of powers and roots, and then today we're going to talk about exponents. So an exponent is a number that tells you how many times a number is used as a factor. It's that little number that we put up in the corner of a number. And a power is a number that is expressed using an exponent. So whenever you use an exponent, you're writing what's called a power, and the base is the number that's being multiplied in a power. So there's three parts here of our expression, and it's the exponent, the base, and together they are the power. So in the example here, we have 5 to the third power, and the 5 is considered the base. That's the number that's being multiplied repeatedly, and it's being multiplied 3 times, so and that's what the exponent tells us. And the 5 and the 3 together is called a power. So we're writing a number as a power, and 5 to the third power is 5 times 5 times 5, which is 125. So 125 expressed with an exponent is 5 to the third power. So how do we write and how do we say these expressions that contain exponents? They're used to show repeated multiplication, but in a compact way. So 5 to the first power is 5 with an exponent of 1. 5 to the second power has an exponent of 2, or sometimes we say 5 squared. If the exponent is a 2, we can say squared. 5 to the third power is 5 with an exponent of 3, or sometimes we say 5 cubed. And then after that, after an exponent of 3, we pretty much say to the whatever power. So 5 to the fourth power, or sometimes shortened to just 5 to the fourth, 5 to the fifth, 5 to the sixth, 5 to the seventh, so on and so forth, all the way up to 5 to the nth power, which means it could be any number of factors of n. So that's what exponents and powers are and how we say them and write them. So let's practice abbreviating these expressions using exponents. So we're going to write each expression using exponents. So the first one is 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. So we're repeatedly multiplying by 1/2, and we're multiplying 1/2 times itself 3 times. So our exponent here is going to be 3. We can rewrite that as 1/2 to the third power. The next one, x times x times x times x times x. That gets a little bit long to say, so it's a good thing we can abbreviate that. There are 5 x's there, so this is x to the 5th, or x to the 5th power. Next one, we have an expression that's multiplied by itself, c minus d times c minus d. So here, c minus d is getting repeated, so that's my base, and it's repeated twice, so that's my exponent, c minus d squared, and then make sure we keep the parentheses around there. Parentheses make differences with exponents and powers. Next one, 9 times f times f times f times f times g. Well, in this expression, f is the only factor that is repeated, and it is repeated 4 times, so I just have 9f to the 4th power times g, 9f to the 4th g. And then the last one, -8 times -8 times -8. -8 is the repeated factor, and I'm going to put that in parentheses, and it is repeated 3 times, so that's to the third power. Now, why is it important to include parentheses in that expression? This is a common error that students will make with exponents and with negatives. Negatives always make our life a little bit more difficult, but if you know how to treat them and how to handle them in each situation, you'll be just fine. So exponents with negative bases, are these two expressions the same thing? Do they mean the same thing? Well, a lot of people would say yes. The actual answer here is no. These are two different expressions, and they mean two different things. In this first one, the exponent, the 2, only applies to the 4. It does not apply to the negative. So the negative is not repeated in this expression here. It's negative 4 times 4. So here the 4 is the only thing that's repeated. The negative is not repeated because the negative is not grouped with the 4 somehow. like it is in the next expression. Here the negative is included in parentheses. It is grouped with the 4, and then the exponent is outside the parentheses. So that tells me that the negative is repeated. So this is -4 times -4. So you can see these are two different expressions. And if you evaluate these, 4 times 4 is 16, and that negative out in front, this is actually -16. So -4 to the second power without parentheses is -16. And the one on the right, -4 times -4, is +16. So -4 in parentheses squared is +16. So it does make a difference where the parentheses are. The parentheses mean the negative is included with the exponent. Without parentheses, the negative is not included with the parentheses. So that is a common error that we need to make sure that we look out for when we're evaluating expressions or writing expressions with exponents and negatives. So again, we'll just review our order of operations. Now we're going to add the final step in here. Maybe you noticed when we talked about order of operations earlier in this course, we didn't include one of the steps. So now we have all of them. And the step 1 would be to simplify the expressions inside the grouping symbols. So again, that's the same as we had before. Parentheses, brackets, the division fraction bar are all considered grouping symbols. And then step 2, now we're going to insert evaluate all powers. All of the powers come after the grouping symbols, and then multiply and divide, and then add and subtract. So we make sure that we do those in order when we're evaluating expressions. So let's take a look at these algebraic expressions and evaluate them for the given value. So one thing we have to look out for again is when we are substituting a value in for a variable that's raised to a power when it's negative, just like this one right here, 10 plus b squared, 10 plus, and b is -2. So is the negative included with the exponent or is it not included? The answer is it is included because b squared means b times b. So whatever b is, you are multiplying it times itself. So that negative goes along for the ride. So this is 10 times -2 squared, or 10 times -2 to the second power, and we have to evaluate that exponent first. -2 times -2 is +4, and that gives us 14 for the value here. Next one, a plus b to the third power, or a plus b cubed. We have to do the grouping symbols first, so this is going to be 5 plus -2 to the third power. Have to do what's inside the parentheses. 5 plus -2 is 3. 3 to the third power is 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. And then 2 minus c squared, and c is 3/4. 3/4 times 3/4 is 9/16. So I have 2 minus 9/16, which gives me 1 and 7/16. And there is my result there. So powers, exponents, bases, be very careful when you have a negative base or a negative in front of a base. Is it included or is it not included? Make sure you're paying special attention to those parentheses. And then when you're substituting values in that have exponents on them, go ahead and put those values in parentheses so any negative is included.